Welcome to your Daily 5 for Monday, June 23rd, 2025. Unless you have somehow been living in a cave with no exposure to any outside discourse, discussion, information, anything, you likely by now are aware that just over a week ago there was a shooting in Minnesota of two state lawmakers, one of which died. The other I don't think is in critical danger anymore, although with gunshots, I don't know what the actual window of being out of danger is. But in any event, there's one person confirmed dead. The shooter has been taken into custody, and I'm sure there's going to be no end of information on this over the next however many months. And in the wake of that, many other lawmakers, especially before the suspect was caught, some were in hiding, but everybody suddenly started saying that everyone had to dial down the rhetoric of politics because it was now getting people shot. And look, I don't disagree with that. But the way some of these people talked about it makes me think they're not really fully aware of how large the problem they're dealing with is. Because this isn't something that just started in the last couple years. It didn't come about with Trump. It's preceded him. And honestly, we have seen political shootings more recently because I think you could classify the United Healthcare CEO assassination as politically motivated. Certainly that shooting on the baseball field, however many years ago, but not that many years ago, was politically motivated. And if you just listen at all to the way that people talk about politics, and first it was really mostly in the media and among politicians, but now even among people talking with each other in normal life, what we have done is we have adopted the language of combat. We basically talk like we're at war. It makes me think of that George Carlin bit about how, shell shock got basically softened down to PTSD so that people wouldn't have to really engage with what war does to people. Well, the media and the way we talk about each other has gone the opposite way. Here, tell me if any of these phrases sound familiar to you, either something you read, heard, or somebody said. Threat to democracy, an assault on the American way of life. Any of that or a permutation of that sound vaguely familiar, where we've heard people saying that some piece of legislation or somebody's background or politics or way of thinking about something is going to be an actual literal threat to something. Now, often what the thing is that's being threatened is fairly vague. Actually, it's kind of funny how often you hear this. I don't even know if funny is the right word, but a lot of times you'll hear about these threats to something, but the actual thing itself, never really all that detailed in what it is. But you just know there's a threat, and so you should panic and you should be concerned. And of course, if all you do is get saturated with that, and I want to be very clear here, I'm not saying that media makes people do anything on its own. I do not believe that. There has never been anything that demonstrates that media on its own will cause anybody to do anything. But there have been studies, there is evidence to show that if you're already experiencing some kind of warped reality, either by a mental illness or for whatever reason, that if you surround yourself with media that reinforces actions you already are starting to want to take, they can add to your decision to do them. Again, not saying media causes it, but saying that media can be a factor in actions that are taken. And so if you look at this combat language that we've all started to use, even amongst each other, then is it really actually, the surprise is, here's what the surprise is, that this isn't happening more often because it is everywhere and it's just inescapable. And what we've done really, and I know I've talked about this in at least one other 5, and there are, I think Colbert or Jon Stewart did something on this as well, the idea of what this language is and how we're using it. But what we're really doing is we're taking anybody who has any disagreement with us, and those lines of disagreement are getting shallower and shallower and shallower. So now it's not even big fundamental things. It's just about anything that can be politically coded, which, of course, everything can be politically coded. And we're making that any disagreement isn't just a difference of opinion. It is now a reason to be concerned about the person that you disagree with because they might be a threat to the American way of life and probably your children. And so we have become weaponized against each other. That's what's going on. And so am I surprised by this? No, the actual violence itself is not the surprise. The relative lack of it happening is what's surprising. But if you think about it, if we're being told all the time that everybody else, that we're all at each other's throats, then eventually, guess what? We're all going to be at each other's throats later.